All right, so what can we say about this one? So I'll give you at least a minute or so. And I'll point out that scale there is that the 1 is a centimeter.
That's a centimeter?
That's a centimeter. Uh-huh.
Oh,
Okay, so what are some of the things that we could state about this one?
high velocity.
I hear a high velocity.
Based on the size, there could be anything from
Pardon?
So based on the size, there could be anything from someone just coughing out that blood, or it could be splatter from someone being hit in the spring.
Okay.
I don't think it would be a blood droplet. I mean, it could be perfectly ground.
Right. This will be interesting because I left my stylus at my office, so here I have to make this smaller. Okay. What about, first off, do we know anything about the direction?
Down. Or no, up.
Top left.
Right, so here, let me put that in. And we know that because the tail, so it's going, whoops, roughly that general direction. Okay. Now, how do we know if it's low, medium, or high velocity?
The diameter.
The diameter. Okay, and so what is this diameter?
1 to 3 millimeters.
So this one's actually most likely between 1 and 3 millimeters because the reason being, let me see.
Didn't you say it was in centimeters?
This is a well, this big one is a centimeter. So that means from here to here is a centimeter. Whoops, I got a little off. I do. So from this point, from the 0 to the 1, that's 1 whole centimeter. So that means that each little line in between there is a millimeter. Because 10 millimeters make up 1 centimeter. And so that's why you kind of gauge it. And it's probably, unfortunately these are all in the same picture, so I can't move it around to actually measure it. But chances are it's, it looks like it's just over 1 millimeter.
So it's pretty high velocity.
No, it would be medium velocity, assuming that's between 1 and 3 millimeters. Now, if you had said, oh, I think that looks like less than 1 millimeter, so it's high velocity, then I would take your logic. And so that would be fine, as long as you explain the reasons why. And now this one, we could actually even determine the angle of impact. How do we determine the angle of impact? Pardon? So we have to do not length over width, but width over length, because it's got to be less than 1. So it's the little number divided by the big number. And then you just take, because it's the sine of the width over the length is equal to, sine inverse sine of width over length. It will tell you the angle, theta. And we'll do that actually in the lab this next week. You have to use something called calipers, which are kind of take some practice to learn how to read them, but they are very, very precise. They can get down to the hundredths of inches. Okay. Are there any other questions about this one before we go to number 3?
What was that again?
This one's technically a medium velocity spatter. I don't think I have the answer. I don't think I put the answers on every single one of these.
Gotcha.
Nope. Okay, so what type of pattern is this and what can we get from it, derive from it? So this one's number 3. And I'll pause and give you guys some time to come up with some possible answers. Okay, so what's one thing that we can state about this one?
It's a low velocity.
This one's definitely going to be low velocity. Okay, so this is definitely low velocity.
Could it be like a trail pattern, I guess?
It could be. It really could be. Plus, we don't know the distance that it's over. Mm-hmm.
Satellites,
It could also be satellite. I would definitely take satellite spatter. Because once again, we don't know what it's coming off of, the bigger thing.
I have a question about flow pattern.
Uh-huh.
Because in my mind, usually I think a flow pattern is like flowing, you know?
Right.
But-
It is due to movement. Yeah.
So like let's say there's like blood on the ceiling and it's like dripping down to the floor, because that's what this looks like it could be to me. Would that be considered flow pattern since it's still gravity acting on it? I guess I don't know how that's exactly.
Right. There's another term that I've heard used that I didn't put in that we're getting to, and that's, you could talk about passive drops. Now, technically, it would be a type of flow pattern,
Okay.
right? Because it's due to gravity and it's moving. Okay. And so, what angle of impact is this one most likely going to be? This is going to be close to 90 degrees, and we know that because it's
There's no
No
flow.
right. There's no tail; it's round, and so now, do you think it's relatively close or relatively far away from whatever object? It's probably pretty close because
They're all kind of splattered out.
right. You don't see all the little you don't see all the little satellites of these satellites possibly. Okay. So, by the way, these were passive drops, approximately 90 degrees. I would take trail, passive flow. That's why satellite. I didn't put that one on there. There were lots of possibilities here because I'd be looking for the logic and for you to explain. Okay. Here's number 4. Okay, so why don't we get someone from one of the tables I haven't spoken of before? So what about the back table? It's got Stephanie, Brandon, Tyler, Gary. What's one thing that we can say about this one? Anything?
Gunshot.
Possibly, right?
High velocity, maybe because it's gunshot.
I could see that. Because that would be assuming, what kind of surface would this be then? It'd be hard, meaning it's not going to be absorbing it, right? Because it's not like cloth. And what else would it be if this was gunshot spatter? Make sure it's not my car that's alarm is going off. Like, is this like a floor, wall, ceiling? This probably would be a wall if you're going to use gunshot splatter. What's another possibility for this one? There's lots of satellite. I mean, you can see all these little, things hitting. I did not park right there.
Right there.
So that's not me. So what's another possibility? There's another one that sometimes I've heard people use on this one that I would take.
Could be excavated.
That's the one that I've had, because what would you be assuming there?
There's like a couple bubbles maybe in the middle.
Right, that this right here in the middle, maybe, you can't really tell from this picture if it's a bubble or if it's just the light reflecting. And so I've had people say, those look like air bubbles to me, so I think this is expirated with satellite spatter. There is another possibility that I've had some people say that I would definitely take. That no, I don't think anyone has said yet. What's another possible? This one's probably not going to be arterial, just because the way that it's not, arc. That's called arcing. So, let's see. This was actually blood dripping into blood. And that's the other one because it's just from a greater distance. So from a long distance, it's going to spatter out more. But I would have taken expirated. I've taken gunshot before because people thought that the little stuff in the middle was, brain matter or tissue. It is a smooth surface. And we could also say that the source had to be stationary because otherwise you get trailing, like that one that was the passive drop before where it was moving around. So whatever is dripping off of from a large distance, which that would be around 3 feet or a little more. It was staying still. Okay, so now it's number 5. Okay, so what's one thing that we can say about this? This could be a pool of blood. I definitely would take pooling. What kind of surface is it on?
Uneven.
It could be on an uneven surface, and we would know that because of
Gravity.
the what?
Gravity.
Right? And so that's also called flow. So I can take a flow pattern. What else could it possibly be?
Could be.
It's passive. We don't. I mean, yeah, it's not clearly not coming from an openly bleeding wound or anything like that.
Could it maybe be a swipe pattern?
Maybe.
If this is like really already.
But yeah, this one is fairly simple. I'll show you what it is. It is a pool, but it is due to passive flow. It had to be relatively close since there's no spatter, and then the surface couldn't have been porous because it's not being soaked up in the surface like like cloth or paper or something like that. Okay, so next is number 6. So what can we say about this one? This one I won't give you very much time because it's fairly simple. So yeah, what kind of pattern is this?
Contact transfer.
It's a contactor transfer. What is it transferred from?
Shoe.
A shoe. What can we say about the shoe?
Probably Reebok.
Possibly. Is it a right foot or a left foot? It's a right foot. And so we know that because see the curvature of the foot would go like that.
It looks like it's maybe like a running shoe or something.
Right, it definitely looks more like it's in a
Some
shoe,
kind of
running
athletic
shoe.
maybe.
You could tell this one. You can tell directionality. Most like, I mean, what? Unless something really odd was happening, what direction is it going?
Going to the
You're right. It's correct. It's going towards the left, unless they were doing the moonwalk backwards. That's the one I was looking for. Skeletonization. That you can see the skeletonization is right around the edges where it's starting to dry.
Could you say it's a porous surface?
It may be.
Because
Looks
it's
like it's
lighter.
semi-soaked up.
Right, because then some of it looks kind of soaked, or it could even be like maybe on some type of concrete that's not smooth. Yep. So, okay, so let's see. Here we go. It's called passive transfer, where someone steps in something and does it again. But I would just take contact transfer. It is a footprint, obviously. Okay, this is it what, number 7? I've already forgotten.
Yep.
There we go. Okay, so what's one thing that we can say about this one? It could be a trail. Cast off is probably the better of the two. What about
I was thinking like satellite because it could be like dripping down on the wall or something like that.
okay?
Wall.
So if this is cast off, what kind of weapon do you think it was that was being? This one is probably from something relatively thin, because of the fact that it's not really broad. It's really close together.
If it is a trail, I presume that they were moving that away because the blood droplets get smaller
Correct.
as it.
What if it's cast off?
If it's cast off, you can see like the double, like how they swung like back up kind of thing, like starting towards the middle.
Oh, yep.
It's like double layered or whatever.
Okay, so the answer This one really was a cast off. You can get an idea of the minimum number of strikes. So this would have a minimum of 1, most likely 2. And you can kind of get an idea of what type of weapon was used. Okay, so here's number 8. It's a little bit more difficult to see. So who would like to say something about this one? Pardon?
Far away, yeah.
This could be from the source could be quite some distance away. What else can we say about it?
High velocity.
This one's probably going to be the high velocity because I mean it looks ridiculously tiny. I mean the best way to tell would be if we had a ruler or calipers to be able to measure it. Okay. Is there anything else that we could possibly say about it?
I thought it was an expirated one.
Possibly, especially if you were far enough away, because then it'd be a fine mist.
I got gunshots fired.
Okay, yep. Especially since we don't know, like the bigger scene. Plus, even with gunshots, sometimes you get forward blowback. Okay, here's the actual. It was high velocity impact. You could try to get angle of impact sometimes and the directionality of it, but you would have to be able to measure that. And we couldn't clearly see that from that picture. Okay, so here's number 9. I won't give you a whole lot of time on this one. Okay, so what can we say about this one? What kind is it?
Swipe.
It's a swipe. And most likely it's a swipe from what?
A victim trying to grab something.
A hand, and is it a right hand or a left hand most likely?
Right.
It's most likely the right hand. Okay, because of the four fingers. And the direction of the swipe, it's going down. Okay, so it's going in this general direction here. I mean, there's at least one other observation that you can make. What else is evident here? You can kind of see it on a couple of the fingers. Skeletonization. There's a little bit of skeletonization that's occurring. Okay. And that's a swipe. Alright. And so this one is number 10. Lovely. So what's one observation that we can make about this? They are satellites. I mean, that's what a lot of those little spatters are. I also heard what?
Expirated.
It could be expirated. You could have some skeletonization. Because, yeah, the expirated because of the possibility of those are bubbles.
Could be blood on blood.
Could be blood on blood hitting. That's what's causing the spatter.
Flow patterns.
Pardon?
There's a little flow.
There is flow. Yep.
I thought it might be a gunshot.
Maybe. This one probably wouldn't just because of the way the flow pattern was, unless, yeah. I would say not from a human. Maybe some other animal.
Would it be medium velocity?
This one, I don't know that we could make that. We would, if we had a scale, something to measure it. Let's see what this says. This is actually a low velocity impact spatter into something else, but there's satellite, angle of impact, and of sorts. Because the fact is, this was coming down pretty much from 90 degrees and hitting that pool before. But I would definitely take expirated, as long as you explain the reasoning behind it. Because especially whenever you print this out and it's not in color, it kind of makes it more difficult to tell if it's just the light reflecting or if it's an air bubble. Okay, and number 11. This one's definitely got multiple things. Okay, so let's just discuss this one. What's one thing that we can say about this one?
Swipe.
It's definitely going to be a swipe. And the directionality of the swipe is, yeah, down and towards the right. Okay, what else could we say about this? It's a good example of something else. Skeletonization. I mean, this is like the textbook example of skeletonization, and the original. We've actually seen the original pattern before. What was so? It's the swipe and skeletonization of what other kind of pattern? Like what did the original drops look like?
Passive flow.
Like a passive flow for the original drops, or that they were swipe after someone had left a trail or something like that. But yeah, this is clearly a swipe with skeletonization. Okay. Are there